Greetings from Croatia, and thank you for warm welcome and tudi čestitke za uspešno konferenco in simpozij. I will say a few words about the covenant that unites Old and New Testament, Christianity and Judaism. Also, I will briefly present Joseph Ratzinger's view on the relationship between Church, Israel, and Judeo-Christian dialogue. The word covenant as a term has been associated with a human relationship throughout history. In Hebrew, covenant is word berit and defined the relationship between two parts. The covenant is built on loyalty and trust. Adalbert Rebic notes that the word covenant appears 287 times in the Hebrew Bible, and we find this word 47 times in the Greek part of the Bible. 55 times signifies covenants between men, and 279 times the relationship between God and man. In the Bible, the theme of the covenant is based on the God idea of man's salvation and the establishment of the personal fellowship with him. The covenant connect Jewish and Christian religious tradition together. The theme of the covenant in Judaism represents the base of a Jewish religious practice. Historically, Jewish people made several times covenant with God, from the covenant of the law with the patriarchs and the Jewish people at the Sinai to the new covenant of freedom in the book of prophets Jeremiah and Ezekiel. In Judaism, the Lord Yahweh established a special relationship with his chosen nation. Word berit etymologically means to connect or unite the two sides into one. By fulfilling the covenant, God shows his love for people of Israel to give them the gift of the law. God established berit with Adam, at Sinai with God's chosen people, with Patriarch Noah, with Abraham, Moses, and David. The covenant rests on a contract and relationship, if then. The covenant at Sinai is confirmed by the blood of the sacrifice offered, while the Ark of the Covenant will, with the stone plates on the law, will be a constant reminder and sign of the God's presence. With the later deviation of Israel and distance from God, there will be a need to realize the new covenant in which the God flock and his bride return to their shepherd and fiancé. The new covenant that will occur in the Eschaton at the end of the time and will establish the peace between man and Creator. Hosea 2nd chapter. There will be a transformation of human hearts in which God's law will dwell. Jeremiah 31 chapter. Second, the theme of the covenant in Christianity. In the New Testament, covenant is based on the God's grace and love, giving the law of the law of the freedom in Christ. By his incarnation, Christ did not abolish the law, but fulfill it. He enabled to a new universal dimension of salvation. He was stopped to be the exclusive God of the Israel alone, but became the inclusive God of all nations. Is enabled new covenant by faith in the Son of God, characterized by the gift of grace and love, not by the power of the law, but the power of the life in the Spirit. The promise that God gave the father of the nation, Abraham, by making a covenant with him, was fulfilled in the person of Jesus Christ thus connect the Jewish and Christian tradition together. In the Septuagint, when translate word berit, the 70 use the Greek word diatheke, not syntheke, and that it's like connection or connect between non-equal parts. That is one way regulation or God command addressed to man. The word diatheke appears in the New Testament in the time of the Lord's Supper in the Gospels. Also, we can find in the Paul epistle to the Corinthians. By his death, Christ became a sacrifice of the covenant, and his blood reconciling man and God. By participating in Christ's sacrifice, by celebration the Eucharist, the believers became partakers of new covenant and Christ's grace. In the Vulgate, we found two Latin words for covenant. One is testamentum, will, and the second is fledus or league, and in the sense that it's in the sense of the last will. Later, translator used different names like or words like proviso, alliance, or union. As in the case of Judaism, so in Christianity, the covenant is the central theme of the religious life. The covenant is not realized through the law, but through Christ. Apostle Paul argues with the Jews in the Galatians that salvation is accomplished by the faith in Christ rather than by the keeping the law. In the New Testament, the covenant in Christ's blood fulfill all previous covenants, and its turning point in the history of salvation. The power of the Spirit overtops the power of the letter. The privilege to belonging to the covenant is opportunity to the believers of all nation and race. In the eschaton, Christ as a bridegroom will come for his church and realize New Jerusalem, in which he will unite the Jewish and Christians worlds. And third theme of the covenant is from perspective of Joseph Ratzinger. From the beginning of his pontificate, Pope Emeritus Benedict XVI built quality Christian-Jewish relations. In his book, Salz der Erde, he wrote in the third chapter that attitude toward Judaism needs to be changed. Thanks to the Old Testament, Christianity is deeply related to the Judaism. Ratzinger knows that Jesus was a Jew, not only a Galilean. Ratzinger believes that the Jews were the first bearers of God's promise, and that the fundamental phase of biblical history took place in them. A major advance in terms of the building Judeo-Christian relations was the removal of Jewish guilt over 2,000 year old for Christ's death, which was often reason for anti-Semitism. Ratzinger, in the book Evangelium Catechese Catechismus, notes that the history of the relationship between Israel and Christianity is many times soaked in the blood and tears. He believes that the Jews are not collectively guilty for Jesus' death. In his position, he referred the Second Vatican Council and the document Nostra Aetate, which marked a turning point in the church approach to the Judaism. Following this, in the second part of the book Jesus of Nazareth, Ratzinger break the myth of responsibility of Jesus' people for that of Christ. That was the work of the temple aristocracy. All sinners have responsibility for that of Christ, he concluded, but the blood of Christ have power for reconciliation. Ratzinger believes that Jesus' mission is to unite Jews and Gentiles so that all nations may worship the God of Israel. Comparing the Old and New Covenant, Ratzinger emphasized that the covenant of Moses is transient, while the covenant of Christ is permanent. The covenant of Moses is based on stone plates on which the law is written in the and it's transient. The new law spoken by the prophets Jeremiah and Ezekiel speaks of the law that will be inscribed in the heart. Old Testament knows three signs of a covenant: Sabbath, circumcision, and rainbow. In the second chapter of the book Sals der Erde, he discussed about the topic of the new covenant and the institution of the Eucharist. It's represent a new testament contrapunct to the history of the covenant in Sinai. Christian faith is established in the new covenant in Christ and his blood. The Lord's Supper is traditionally associated with the Jewish Passover and with the Day of Atonement, Yom Kippur. According to Ratzinger, the Old Testament believer does not look on the law as a burden, but a form of God's grace and knowing His will. The New Testament believer follows the Messiah Torah, which is Jesus himself, and in which the stone plates from Sinai are inscribed in the living flesh, in the form of the double commandment of law. So, to uphold the Torah, which is fulfilled in Jesus himself, means to imitate and follow him. Ratzinger concludes that the Old and New Testament can in no way be strictly separated as two different religions. There is only one will of God with man and one historical action of God, which is realized in the different invitations and ultimately belong to each another. And as conclusion, Christian and Jews have a common task for the world. Ratzinger believes that that they should accept each other in deeply reconciliation, not renouncing their faith, but from the deepness of their faith in self. Christians and Jews need to testimony for one God who worship is expressed by keeping the commandments of love for God and for neighbors. The theme of the covenant involves more than just the bridge that connects two testimonies, Old and New Testament. And without the light of Christ in the Christianity, the light of God go out in Judaism. For a complete picture of the choice and the fulfillment of God's people, it is necessary to look at the Old Testament and New Testament perspective that connect Judaism with Christianity. Thank you for attention.